Welcome to today's deep dive. I want you to picture something for a second. Somewhere in your home, right now, there's a drawer. Or maybe it's a cardboard box shoved to the very back of a closet.
Oh, yeah, or that dusty shelf in the garage.
Right, exactly. The one you intentionally kind of just ignore. You know exactly the one I'm talking about. It's filled with things you don't use, things you don't actually need. And yet when you pull them out with the strict intention of throwing them away, you can't.
You put them right back. Every time.
Every single time. So today's deep dive pulls apart the profound psychology behind why you do that. We're looking at a massive stack of research that proves this isn't about being messy or unorganized.
Yeah.
It's about memory. It's about hidden emotional needs and these invisible social pressures making you hold on for dear life. So what does this all mean?
Well, to get to the meaning of why we hold on to seemingly useless items, the research points us straight to the foundational level of human memory.
Okay, lay it on us.
So one of the primary concepts in our source pile describes possessions as containers of memory. And, the physical objects themselves obviously don't have little hard drives in them.
Right.
They don't literally store the memory of a past event, but they act as a tangible access point to a very specific autobiographical experience. Because the brain actually struggles to recall abstract feelings on command, but physical objects trigger sensory pathways that make those memories accessible.
Think about an old concert ticket. From the outside, to a stranger, it's just a faded, crumpled piece of paper.
Totally worthless to anyone else.
Exactly.
Hmm.
But for the person who kept it in a shoebox for 20 years, holding that ticket physically might bring back the exact smell of the venue, or who they were dating at the time, what they're worried about, how they felt about their future.
Yeah, it's powerful.
It essentially summons the ghost of who they were at that precise age.
Because the physical touch and the visual cue of the ticket act as a bridge. The research shows that the emotional value of an item is entirely private. And these objects provide a crucial sense of psychological continuity, especially during major life transitions.
Like when things are changing really fast.
Exactly. When you are moving to a new city, or you're aging, or you're navigating the grief of losing someone, your internal landscape is just in chaos. Having these physical anchors in your environment reminds your brain that your past still matters.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, you understand who you are in the present because you have tangible physical proof of where you've been in the past.
So have you ever played a really long, immersive video game where you put hundreds of hours into building a character?
Oh, definitely. I have. And it requires a huge time investment.
Right. So throwing away one of these keepsakes feels a lot like deleting an old save file in a game.
Oh, that is a great way to put it.
Because intellectually, you already played it. You know the experience still happened in the real world. You still have the memory of playing it in your head. But emotionally, you are terrified to hit delete because you fear you'll never be able to access that specific exact version of your past again.
The physical object is the save file.
Yes, the object is the save file.
And discarding those items triggers a profound sense of guilt or a fear of forgetting because your brain essentially interprets the action as a betrayal of the memory itself.
A betrayal. Wow.
Yeah, when you throw the object in the trash, it feels like you are actively letting go of the person associated with it, or purposely erasing a period of your own life, because the object has given a fragile, invisible memory a physical form, right? So destroying the object feels psychologically identical to destroying the memory.
Okay, let's unpack this, because if objects hold our past, they also seem to broadcast our present. We're moving from memory, which is who we were, to identity, which is who we are right now.
Right, the transition goes from this item helps me remember to this item is me.
That is wild.
It is. The sociological research we looked at highlights how people actually incorporate objects into their core self-concept. The boundary between the human and the object blurs.
So we literally think of the stuff as part of our bodies.
Basically, yeah. We stop seeing belongings as external tools or separate items and start viewing them as an actual extension of our physical and psychological selves. The internal language a person uses shifts from that is mine to that is me.
Which makes sense when you think about the different layers of how we present ourselves to the world. Like, you've got your personal identity, like the worn out sci fi paperbacks on your shelf that show you're a nerd.
Duty is charged.
Right.
Yep.
Or your painting supplies. But then you have social identity, which are the objects that signal where you fit into the broader culture.
Like professional gear.
Exactly. Like a chef carrying a personalized set of extremely expensive, meticulously maintained knives. Those tools represent professional competence. They tell the world, I am a master of this craft.
What's fascinating here is how the act of collecting actively shapes a person's narrative. One of the papers outlines the concept of the collector identity.
The collector identity.
Yeah. When you identify as a collector, let's say you collect vintage film cameras, the objects aren't just things sitting in your house. The entire process, the hunt for a rare lens, the categorization of the different camera bodies, the careful display on your living room shelf, it all becomes central to how you want to be perceived by others.
So it's like a performance.
Exactly. You are literally curating your identity on a shelf for the world to see and validate.
But wait, if our identity is literally tied to our physical objects, what happens during a massive life change?
Like what kind of change?
Like, let's say you go through a brutal career shift and leave the culinary world, or you go through a terrible breakup and have a box of a former partner's gifts. Does throwing away your old professional tools feel so incredibly hard because you are actively killing off a past version of yourself?
Yes. Confronting a profound change is exactly why letting go of those items is so emotionally taxing. You're not just cleaning out a closet, you're being forced to redefine your identity.
Wow, that is heavy.
If you lose your job and you have to pack up those expensive chef knives, putting them in the donation bin means accepting the reality that you are no longer that person. Letting go requires an emotional severance from a past self. It is a psychological amputation, which is an incredibly heavy lift for the brain to process.
So we've got objects holding our memories and objects building our identities. Let's get into the mechanics of why some of us are able to let go of these items relatively easily, while others hold on with a white-knuckle death grip.
This is where it gets really deep into psychology.
Because the source material points to some deep, often hidden emotional needs, specifically pointing toward childhood attachment styles.
Right. If we connect this to the bigger picture of emotional regulation, we see people using objects to manage difficult or overwhelming feelings.
Because the world is stressful.
The world is chaotic. It is unpredictable. Human relationships are incredibly complicated. But organizing a collection of vintage cameras brings an immediate sense of control. The objects stay where you put them. They don't argue back. They are entirely reliable.
So it actually ties back to how we were raised. The research pile kept mentioning attachment theory, which basically says the way we connected with our caregivers when we were toddlers acts like a blueprint for how we seek comfort later in life.
Our early relationships form that exact template, and the studies mapped this onto our possessions and found a stark contrast.
Okay, break that down for us.
People who developed a secure attachment style, meaning they had consistent, reliable emotional support growing up, they can usually let go of objects easier. Their baseline sense of security comes from stable interpersonal relationships with other human beings. They don't need the physical object to feel safe in the world.
But for people who had an insecure attachment style growing up, the objects essentially become a substitute for people.
Exactly. For someone with an anxious attachment style, objects become a primary source of reassurance. When human relationships feel inconsistent or threatening or fragile, possessions offer a permanent stability that people simply do not.
That is so sad, but it makes so much sense.
The brain redirects its need for connection toward the inanimate object. This leads directly to a psychological phenomenon called anthropomorphism.
Wait, anthropomorphism meaning we treat the favorite coffee mug or the vintage camera like it actually have human feelings.
Yes, we treat the objects almost like companions. The person projects emotions onto the item, believing the object feels loyalty, or that throwing it away would somehow hurt it or abandon it.
I think of it this way. For someone who feels deeply uncomfortable relying on other people, objects are the ultimate safe friends.
Oh, for sure.
Like, a meticulously organized record collection is never going to judge you for what you wear. It's never going to reject you. It's never going to text you at the last minute and cancel dinner plans. It is always there.
When you look at early life experiences involving trauma, profound loss, neglect, or even extreme instability like moving around to 10 different schools as a kid, objects become essential touchstones.
Because you couldn't rely on anything else.
Right. When the humans in your environment are unreliable, or when your physical environment is constantly shifting beneath your feet, a possession is enduring. The object is carrying the emotional weight and providing the psychological safety net that a secure human relationship normally would.
Here's where it gets really interesting, though, because everything we've talked about so far is internal.
Really personal, yeah.
Right. It's about our private memories, our personal identity, the way our childhood wired our brains. But we don't collect in a vacuum. The external world, society, has a massive say in what we keep and why we keep it.
Oh, the external pressures of culture play a defining role. Sociological studies in our stack highlight how Western consumer culture completely normalizes and, frankly, heavily encourages constant, unending acquisition.
Yeah, shopping isn't just getting the groceries you need to survive the winter. It's considered a hobby. It's a valid form of weekend leisure.
Society and social norms also dictate what is considered valuable to keep. Think about why collecting fine art or rare watches is seen as prestigious. It's an indicator of high status and sophistication.
Right, whereas collecting old newspapers or plastic bottle caps is viewed with suspicion or concern.
Exactly. Culture assigns the meaning. Collecting becomes an accepted tool to signal your wealth, your status, or your specialized expertise to the people around you.
And niche communities play a huge role in supercharging this, whether it's an in-person hobby group that meets on Tuesdays or a massive online subreddit dedicated to a specific video game.
Those groups are powerful.
They really are. The research pointed out that these communities literally dictate the rules of the game. They decide what counts as a complete set. They decide what specific flaw makes an item rare instead of just broken.
And this raises an important question about individual agency and motivation. You might think you are building a collection purely because you personally love the items, but the community is establishing the exact standards you are striving to meet.
So you're being influenced without realizing it.
Definitely. If the group collectively decides a certain limited edition item from 1999 is the Holy Grail, you suddenly feel a burning desire to acquire it. The motivation shifts. You want it not necessarily because of its intrinsic value to your daily life, but because of the immense status and validation it grants you within that specific community.
So let me challenge the whole premise of individuality here. Is a lot of modern collecting just culturally sanctioned peer pressure?
That is a great question.
Like, we walk around thinking we are expressing our unique, beautiful individuality through our perfectly curated shelves, but are we really just buying and hoarding exactly what our specific subculture tells us is valuable so we can fit in?
Well, I wouldn't go so far as to say it is just peer pressure. There is genuine intrinsic joy in finding an item you love. The hunt itself is thrilling, but the community defines the rules of that joy.
Okay, fair point.
We have to look at how the brain processes social validation. When you post a picture of that rare 1999 first edition on a message board and the upvotes pour in, your brain's reward center lights up. You get a massive dopamine hit.
Oh, the internet points. We all love them.
Exactly. Group dynamics, trends, and the fear of missing out hijack our internal motivations. We are fundamentally social creatures, and curating a socially approved collection is often just an elaborate way of securing our place and our status within the tribe.
If our brains are wired to find emotional safety in physical objects, and society is constantly rewarding us with dopamine hits for buying more of them, it feels like a recipe for disaster.
It definitely can be.
At what point does this entire system completely short-circuit? Like, when does collecting cross the line into hoarding?
We have to view this on a continuum. On one end, you have healthy collecting. The behavior is highly structured, it's intentional, it brings the person genuine pleasure, and most importantly, it does not interfere with the functionality of their daily life.
And when it short-circuits?
The defining characteristic of hoarding is intense, paralyzing distress when attempting to discard an item, regardless of that object's actual objective value in the real world.
Let me ask about a feeling I think everyone listening has experienced. You're cleaning out a drawer, you hold up a weird, tangled cord or a random piece of hardware, and you think, man, I might need this someday.
The classic trap.
Right.
Yeah.
You vividly imagine a future scenario where throwing it away ruins your day.
The fear of making the wrong choice. The cognitive struggles associated with hoarding center around profound difficulties with decision-making and categorization.
Okay, how so?
Well, to a healthy collector, a piece of old junk mail is obviously trash. It goes in the recycling bin without a second thought. To someone who struggles with hoarding, that junk mail might contain a piece of information they might need in 5 years, or it represents a missed opportunity.
So it's paralyzing.
Exactly. The anxiety of making the wrong choice about throwing it away is so overwhelming that the brain simply refuses to make the choice at all. The safest option is to just keep it.
But keeping everything eventually leads to the physical dangers, the disrupted living spaces where you can't even walk through a hallway.
When you can no longer sleep in your bed because it is covered in boxes or cook in your kitchen, the volume of items creates severe safety hazards. But the critical takeaway from the clinical research is the need for a deeply empathetic view of this condition. Hoarding is not laziness. It is a complex biopsychosocial condition.
Wait, biopsychosocial, that's a mouthful. Are you saying it's not just a mental tic, but our actual biology and our social environment teaming up against us?
Yes, it means it involves biological vulnerabilities in the brain's executive functioning, and psychological factors like the attachment styles and memory encoding we discussed, plus the social environments that encourage acquisition.
So it's a perfect storm.
It really is. It is the very same memory attachment, the very same identity fusion, and the very same emotion regulation strategies that we all experience daily, just dialed up to an intense, inflexible, and overwhelming extreme.
So where exactly is the line drawn for the average person? How do you know the difference between being smartly prepared for the future by keeping a spare cable and falling into a harmful pattern?
The clinical line is drawn strictly at distress and impairment. Are you keeping the extra cable in a designated drawer where you can easily find it? And does your life proceed normally? That is just preparation.
Right, that's just being an adult.
Right. But if the thought of throwing away a broken cable causes your heart to physically race, if your spare room is so filled with might need it someday items that no one can physically open the door, and if your partner or family members are constantly fighting with you about the clutter,
Then that's a problem.
that is impairment. The defining boundary is when the objects start dictating your life, controlling your physical space, and damaging your relationships rather than you controlling the objects.
That is a massive perspective shift on what clutter actually represents. Let's just recap the journey we've just been on. We started with the realization that a simple, faded concert ticket acts as a sensory mechanism to retrieve our oldest memories.
Yeah.
We explored how our clothing and our professional tools literally hold the architecture of our current identities, and how throwing them away feels like killing off a past version of ourselves. We uncovered how the blueprint of our childhood attachment styles might be the hidden reason we cling to an old coffee mug for emotional safety.
It's incredible how much weight a mug can hold.
It really is. And finally, we revealed how society and subcultures silently dictate the rules of what we value by hijacking our brain's reward centers.
Because our physical possessions are intimately woven into our psychological fabric. They're not just things, they are tangible reflections of our internal world.
To you listening, the next time you open that drawer or pull that heavy cardboard box out of the back of the closet, I want you to look at it differently. You shouldn't just see a mess that you've been putting off cleaning. You are looking at a physical museum of your past selves. You are looking at your hidden emotional needs, your personal history, and your desperate attempts to find your place in the world, all wrapped up in everyday objects.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it changes how we interact with our environment entirely.
It does. But I want to leave you with one final thought, something to mull over on your own after this ends. Throughout this deep dive, we've talked about physical objects, sweaters, tickets, books, cameras. But as our world moves increasingly online, many of our collections are becoming entirely digital.
Oh, that is so true.
We have tens of thousands of photos floating in the cloud. We have vast, invisible libraries of digital music, virtual armor sets, and video games. If our physical possessions have historically been the literal, tangible anchors that trigger our memories and prove our identities, what happens to our sense of self when our stuff is reduced to invisible data on a server somewhere in the desert?
That is a brilliant question.
Are we fundamentally changing how we remember who we are when we can no longer hold our memories in our hands?
We are stepping into an era where the containers of our memories are entirely invisible.
We really are. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Next time you look at that junk drawer, remember, it's not clutter, it's you.